John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, at JF McMullen on Twitter. He has a plethora of Eagles content up right now at 97.3 ESPN.com, including his first and 10 piece, standouts in the game from Sunday. 10 things you should know on the Eagles' win over the Redskins. And he joins us now to go over them here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. I guess if you're starting with the win yesterday, you got to start with Carson Wentz. Maybe not his best game ever, but they probably don't win the game, John, if he doesn't have the skill set that he brought to the table on Sunday.
No, I would agree with that. That's definitely the good part of it. There are not a lot of quarterbacks in this league that could have made that play to Nelson Agholor and do everything it took to extend that play and get the football down the field. So that's the good stuff. You know, some of the other stuff, the accuracy is not necessarily there. He had another touchdown on that beautifully designed play where they faked the reverse, the end around to Nelson Agholor. He sort of peeled back the other way. Got the Redskins, should have been a touchdown. That was off. And the lateral pass was off, although Doug Peterson kind of blamed that on Nelson today. So there's still room for improvement. But I'll tell you, if you can extend plays in this league, and it starts with Aaron Rodgers, obviously, Ben Roethlisberger, you're going to be really good. And he's got the innate ability to do that. And the key part of it is to do it while keeping your eyes downfield. That's the difficult part. And that's what is sort of in his DNA as a quarterback. So from that standpoint, I'd be very excited.
Let's get into some of the things that you wrote about, 10 things you should know, at our website, 973ESPN.com. The Eagles had Ronald Darby for about 18 minutes yesterday before an ugly ankle injury. What is your take on what's next for Darby? It sounds like the Eagles got good news, although I don't know how the news got out there, and Doug seemingly had no clue that there was a report out there. Maybe the report was fiction, I don't know, but it seems like it's pretty concrete, although it sounds like good news for the Eagles. That being said, the Eagles' secondary, even with Darby, I thought Cousins, they got beat early in the game multiple times, and Cousins just did not play very well.
No, he didn't. And, you know, that's something Brandon Graham talked about, making him feel uncomfortable, which I think the Eagles front did. So you're right. Terrell Pryor was open a number of times, and they just weren't on the same page. I think chemistry has something to do with it as well, because it's his first year there. But they're a different team with Darby out there. There's no question. It gives Jim Schwartz more confidence to blitz and be more aggressive. So it's a big loss. The disconnect with what Doug said, it's not – I don't know if he's aware of the actual report. The Eagles doctors did their examination, came up with a dislocation, no tendon damage, no ligament damage. And then they sent the results down to Dr. Robert Anderson in Charlotte, who's the go-to guy sort of for foot and ankle injuries. And they're waiting for him to chime in. So in all likelihood, he's going to agree with it, and it's going to be a 4 to 6 week injury. I would say more towards 6 weeks. 4 is being really, really optimistic. So that was the disconnect from what he said in the Ian Rappaport report. But it's very good news on Ronald Darby, and what could have been a season-ending injury is not going to be. So obviously it's still bad because he's going to be gone for a number of weeks, but it's the best you could have hoped for at this point.
So, John, how do they move forward without Darby? What's the plan there to sort of mix and match and make something work?
Well, in game, it was interesting because they started by putting Patrick Robinson outside, letting Malcolm Jenkins play the slot and bringing Corey Graham. Then it seemed after they could make adjustments and settle down after halftime, they brought in Jalen Watkins to play on corner. And Doug mentioned today they would prefer to play Patrick Robinson inside. He's gotten very comfortable in the slot. He, by the way, played very, very well. He was one of the Eagles' best defensive players yesterday. And he's better than people think he is. His issues have been staying healthy. But when he has been able to stay healthy, he's a former first-round pick. He's very, very athletic. Often wins some of the Eagles' conditioning test in building. So he's very athletic. He's very capable. But the question you have with him is how long can he stay on the field? So they want to keep him inside on the slot, and from that point, somebody's got to play outside. I thought Jalen Watkins played very well in limited opportunities. He should be in the conversation. He's ping-pong back and forth. He was a corner, then he was a safety, now he's a corner again. And if not, Rasul Douglas. He's got to be up. He didn't rest. Third-round pick. We talked about the offseason before they got Ronald Darby, before they got Dexter McDougal. He was a guy that was going to have to play early. When they made those trades, it wasn't a necessity, and now all of a sudden it becomes a necessity again. He's got to get on the field. The problem is I'm not sure he's ready to play at a high level.
What's the word, John, on Jason Peters? Because he was out of the game, then he came back in the game for a brief minute, then was out of the game again. What's the latest on Jason Peters and his availability for the Chiefs game?
Yeah, he's as it states right now. Jason said after the game he's going to play, and he said it's Andy, I'm going to play. So he has every intention of playing. But anytime, I've been talking about this for years. At Jason's age, and sort of these nagging injuries crop up. I thought one of the Eagles' biggest mistakes in the offseason was getting rid of Alan Barber. Now, Alan didn't want to be here. Because he wanted to be a starter, and the Eagles were intent on making Isaac Seumalo a starter. But I think Philadelphia should have done everything possible to make him happy, because I think that swing tackle position is going to be more important for this team than most teams because of Peters and his age and his susceptibility to these sort of tweaks in game. I think it's more important than anyone realized, and you kind of saw yesterday, Vaitais is not ready, especially on the left side. I mean, he can't play left tackle in this league. So, to me, that's one of the biggest concerns they should have.
Well, that sort of answers what my follow-up question was going to be, that if for some reason Jason Peters couldn't go, would they go with Big V and the left and move Lane to the right? Or what would the way they break that line down be with Big V? Because yesterday – he's right in the spotlight.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't do it in game, as you saw yesterday. It's a perfect example. Jeff Stoutland constantly says you can't throw Lane Johnson out at left tackle unless you at least give him a week or two of reps in practice so he can get used to the footwork. So they're not going to do it in a situation like yesterday, and that's why you see him put in Vaitai at left tackle, keep Lane there. If Jason were to be absent for a number of weeks, I don't think there's any question they would move Lane Johnson over to left tackle and put Vaitai at right tackle. But again, if it happens on game day, they're not going to move Lane.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. John, what's your take on the running back spot? You wrote about Wendell Smallwood. I think a lot of people will agree with you. Get ready for more of a workload, but LeGarrette Blount did not have a great preseason. It was pretty evident he was the guy yesterday.
Yeah, well, it was running back by committee. Darren Sproles actually played more. He played the most of all the running backs. But LeGarrette, and that's something the Eagles have to keep an eye on, because LeGarrette was only out there, I think it was 34% of the time. So he played 23 snaps, I think, I'm going from memory, and he got the football 15 times. So the issue with that becomes, if he's on the field, you kind of know he's getting the football, unless that changes. And that's a tendency that people are going to pick up quickly on, and that could become a problem for the Eagles. So, it's going to be running back out by committee. Sproles played the most, about 50% of the time. Then it was LeGarrette, and Wendell was only out there for, I think, 15 snaps. And I think for Smallwood, it's got to do with his pass protection. I think that's the one issue the Eagles question. And if you're going to play a lot in the NFL at running back, you see all the blitzing, not only in that game, but all across this league. You have to be able to pass protect and pick up the blitz.
Talking with John McMullen here. Nelson Agholor, man. How about him? The guys, you guys saw him in mini camps and training camps and said, this guy looks different. He played different. His numbers suggested he's different, but are you buying into him?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, you saw the explosion. You saw the fact why he was a first-round pick. He's very athletic. I often say he does everything a wide receiver should do except catch the football consistently. That's kind of big. That's been his issue. But I'm going to add one other to that. And one of the things that Nelson needs to clean up, and as I mentioned before that Doug Peterson spoke about in his press conference, on that lateral play, he got too deep. It's the little things. It's the attention to detail. A couple times during the game, you saw Brent Selleck, some other players having to get him lined up correctly. I don't see the attention to detail that great receivers have. But, hey, you know, when he plays with confidence, as you kind of saw yesterday, he can make plays. And he should have 2 touchdowns if it wasn't for the bad Carson Wentz throw on that fake reverse, as I mentioned, that should have went for a touchdown. So if he's going to contribute at that level, the Eagles are going to be very, very happy. But there still needs to be improvement.
You talked a lot about how Eagle fans would like Tim Jernigan, that you thought he was an upgrade over Logan. Yesterday, he had a sack, had a nice dance. Him and Fletcher Cox both. You saw the fruits of the labor there with that defensive line yesterday. Chris Long, even though he had Kirk Cousins in his grasp and somehow got out of that, they got to the quarterback. The pressure from the line, do you think, helped cover up the secondary a little bit? Not that the secondary was awful, but do you think that's what their intention is, to get that pass rush so that secondary doesn't have to play as well?
Oh, yeah, there's no question about it, and that's a lot of the reason Tim was brought in, because he's a good pass rusher from that interior spot, whereas Benny is more of a run stuffer. But, you know, he was good, Fletcher was great, and Brandon was better. So, I mean, when you get 3 guys playing at that level, it's going to be pretty impressive, and that's what it was. And at some point, but I'm going to call out the Philadelphia fans a little bit here, because why Brandon Graham is not a superstar is astonishing to me. When you talk about supposedly what Philadelphia loves is guys who give effort. I mean, nobody gives more effort than Brandon Graham, and he's just blowing things up. This is a year plus when he's been one of the best 5 defensive ends in football, and nobody in this town, I'm exaggerating for a fact, notices it. It's astonishing to me.
John McMullen with us, our 97.3 ESPN Eagles Insider. John, you have an article up about Doug Peterson being prepared. How about Doug Peterson and he talked about the monkey getting off his back yesterday, and we know about that Gatorade bath he got at the end. But did Doug Peterson come through with okay colors for you?
Oh, yeah. I think it was evident that the least qualified coach in the last 30 years was at least more qualified than Jay Gruden for 1 week. I think we could say that. I think you could say, and third time I brought it up, that play to Nelson Agholor, that's as pretty as it gets from a design standpoint in this league as far as drawing up a play. And it should have worked if it was executed correctly. The Eagles dominated that football game. Probably shouldn't have been as close. And you can say the Redskins missed some things to Terrell Pryor. I think that's fair. I don't think the last fumble, touchdown, the strip sack, and the touchdown, that should have been overturned. That was not a fumble. So there's a lot of things the Redskins can point to and say Kirk Cousins, as Mike said, did not play well. But there's a reason Kirk Cousins didn't play well, because he was being harassed from basically play one. So you got to give him credit. To go on the road to win a division game, And we talked about what a big spot it is because it's a really, really tough task this week coming up in Kansas City. So in a lot of ways, it was very important to get this game, and they got it.
Yeah, and they got it without Alshon Jeffrey and Torrey Smith. But statistically, they didn't do much. But what impact did those two guys have?
Oh, I thought they had a huge impact, and that's the thing. Torrey, most obviously. I mean, Torrey doesn't have to catch the football to do things that help this offense, and you saw him stretch the field. They had the two deep shots. One was underthrown, one was overthrown. Both could have been hit if they were on the same page and everything was working. And what that does, obviously, is open up things underneath. And if you look real quickly at Carson Wentz, Zach Ertz, well, that looks pretty good because there's more space underneath for Zach Ertz, and people can't jump on routes. And then you saw Jeffrey, those 50-50 balls. He almost came down with two. He didn't come down with either. But you kind of saw the one that was poorly thrown. It could have been intercepted. He made sure it wasn't intercepted, and that's what he does. And that's why quarterbacks feel comfortable throwing him the football in those 50-50 situations because they know worst-case scenario is incomplete pass. He's not going to let the defensive back intercept it. And you'll see, you didn't see it yesterday, but you'll see throughout the year he's going to come up with a lot of it.
Hey, what'd you think about the inactive list yesterday? I was a little surprised by a couple things. One, you had 4 draft choices on there. One was cut already, so 5 draft picks didn't participate yesterday. 2 guys that got extensions. One was Warmack. They only have 8 linemen to begin with, so they played with 7 linemen yesterday. I was a little surprised at the inactive list. And then, of course, you saw Corey Clement active, and you tweeted this right out in the beginning as he made a play from the opening kickoff. That's why he's active on game day, obviously, because they like his special team. So I thought the inactive list was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, from the offensive line standpoint, I mean, that's where we are in this league. You tend to only dress 7, and you have an interior guy and a swing tackle. And the interior guy is Stefan Wisniewski, and the swing tackle is Vaitai. So that's how it's going to be moving forward. The rookies, I mean, yeah, they're not ready to play by and large. And you could argue Matt Collins really shouldn't have dressed. And we all kind of said before the season, because Mac was such a great special teams player. But if you remember, when Dave Fitt talked a couple weeks ago in training camp, I had mentioned, he talked about Mac. He was on the second team on special teams, every single unit. So he was not picking that up as quickly. And Corey Clement was. And that was sort of not only the up back on kickoff returns, but he's also been a good coverage player. So that's why he was up. And you know, I don't know. Obviously, Rasul Douglas is going to be active most likely, but that's out of necessity. As for the other rookies, specifically Pumphrey and Gibson, I mean, let's be honest. If this was the cliched 53 best men, they wouldn't even be on this team. And I think when you look at Gibson, this tells you all you need to know, guys. On practice on Thursday, when Mike Garreau runs his individual drills, it goes in order. Actually, Torrey Smith is first because he's more of a veteran presence than Alshon, but we all know Alshon's number 1. But from there, it goes Agholor's 3, Marcus Johnson is 4, or Matt Collins. Matt Collins is 4. Marcus Johnson is 5. And then Greg Ward and Bryce Treggs, practice squad players, take reps before Shelton Gibson. So Shelton's only on the team because he was a draft choice. And both he and Pumphrey, same reason, they're not going to dress all year unless there's significant injuries. And if there is, they probably bring up guys from the practice squad they think are more ready to play.
Hey, John, I want to ask you about, you talked about Brandon Graham a minute ago and how maybe the fans, that's a guy that the fans don't recognize as much as they should. What about Jordan Hicks? Is he also a guy that falls in that category that for some reason doesn't get the accolades that he should get?
No, I mean, I think everyone knows Jordan is a great player. I mean, I joked he's almost got like a GPS in the football. He's always coming up with a turnover. Yesterday was a fumble recovery. Always seems to be in the right place. I think the difference between him and Graham is the fact that Graham was a slow starter in his career, and he was obviously a first-round pick. So he had that sort of bust label. And all of a sudden you wake up one day and say, wow, that's a pretty good player. When did that happen? But he had a number of years where he didn't perform. And I think people still have that sort of aftertaste in their mouth. But with Jordan, I think you could make a case that nationally, as far as a Pro Bowl berth, things like that, maybe he's been underrated. But I don't think locally, I think people know how good he's been because he's always around the football.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, and, of course, national columnist, FanRag Sports. We will talk NFL heavy tomorrow as well, as we'll recap Week 1, 2 Monday Nighters tonight, full slate of games. We'll break it all down with John on tomorrow's show. Thanks, pal.
Hey, thank you, guys.